PS5 news update. It's been quite a while since my last update. And there's been a lot happening on the PS over the past few weeks. To dive into not so much happening on the PS5. But this is typically what you tend to see. Whenever a new jailbreak comes out for one system or the other, the developers are mostly the same developers that work on both systems. So if something new comes out for the PS4, the focus shifts to the PS4 for a while. And that tends to be what happens. Depending on what system, the developers are focusing their attention on. At the time, at the moment, that has been the PS4. But it will eventually shift back over to the PS5 and I do still have some PS5 topics to get into here. But before we get started with that, let's go ahead and cover all the PS4 news. So first of all, we got a new system software bringing the firmware up to 12.52 on the PS4. And it does say that they've made some security fixes to the system software in this particular version. Obviously, we do not want to update to 12.52. If you're on 12.50, stay on 12.50. Hopefully, you were able to get the Lua game DMOS while you could. Well, that was the latest firmware. But now, it looks like they have patched something in 12.52. So we want to just stay on as low a firmware as possible. It's also worth mentioning that the revert mod exists, which allows you to revert your console back to the previously installed firmware. So if you're on 12.50, any previously installed firmware is going to be a jailbreakable firmware. But if you update from 12.50 to 12.50, then your previously installed firmware will be 12.50, which is also not jailbreakable. So that is something to bear in mind as well. So good idea to stay on 12.50 because your console is very likely reversible back to a jailbreakable firmware. Using the revert method, obviously, that's not something that most people are gonna be able to do. Because you need to know what you're doing with soldering to revert the system. But you know maybe there's a mod shop or a repair shop somewhere that you could potentially send your console to. That could do it for you. So definitely something worth keeping in mind now here. We've also seen that firmware 12.50 and 12.52 has got support for the PS4 GoldHEN payload. So that basically means that if we ever get a new jailbreak for 12.52, we'll be able to load the PS4 GoldHEN on it pretty much as soon as there's a bin loader available, so that we can then jailbreak it. Now, obviously, that doesn't mean there's a jailbreak available for it yet. And unfortunately, it seems that some people may have updated based on this information. According to Chameleon, who says that they've received requests on how to jailbreak 12.52, and even many people updating their PS4s to these firmwares, which obviously you should never do. Just because we have payloads that now support those higher firmwares, we need an actual jailbreak to be able to load them. That's the big important thing that we don't have yet. So that is something obviously to keep in mind there. We're also seeing digital-only games being dumped and turned into fake packages. There's been a whole lot of games recently over the past few weeks that are now being made available. So lots of games that previously could not be dumped before are now being dumped, and we're getting lots of, you know, PS2 games and some kind of obscure PS4 games that were only available in digital form are now being made available as fake packages that you can run on your jailbroken PS4. So that is awesome to see. So recapping the progress that's been made on the 12.0 so far, to jailbreak, we have got, of course, GoldHEN version 2.4b 18.4 that was recently released with support for 12.0 and 12.0. It is just the previous version of GoldHEN with 12.0 and 12.0, so no new features added in this version. There is also a bug I've noticed with this version on 12.0, which is that often when I go to shut down the console, it fails to shut down. The LED just continuously blinks and it doesn't actually turn off. So that does appear to be one of the bugs at the moment. I believe this was just kind of a hasty release. To try and get support for 12.0 and 12.0, there is a more significant update that is being worked on at the moment. And Chameleon has also talked about looking into the persistent method that Alice have talked about back in September of last year, which can potentially allow us to kind of keep GoldHEN running, or not have to at least go through the process of rerunning the jailbreak and rerunning GoldHEN whenever you basically restart the console. That would be the idea. So it looks like there is something that might be able to be done there, but we'll have to wait and see if that comes in the next release of GoldHEN. There's also been some improvements to the open source version of PS4 GoldHEN project, which works on 5.05 up to technically 12.52. Although we don't have a jailbreak for those firmwares so let's just say 5 to 12.0 to realistically. So there has been a new plugins feature added here from Illusion, which adds a few different plugins. The FTP server plug in the kernel log plugin, as well as also a shell UI plugin, which augments the settings menu to add a new menu option in their GoldHEN settings, which then has a few additional options like like a package installer, as well as a package allowing you to install packages from the hard drive, as the USB, as well as payload which allow you to customize the hand settings, like being able to enable and disable the plugins and feature, the firmware update blocker, and a bunch of other options built in there for customizing the homebrew enabler. Although those only apply on a restart, so you have to restart the console and then run HEN again for those changes to take effect. But that is included in the latest version. Of course, I have videos already going over this new update to the PS5 HEN and the latest GoldHEN release, which I'll leave down in the video description. Most homebrew applications are also up to working firmware fine 12.0 because most of them are now firmware agnostic. So applications like the Apollo Save tool, the PS4 Cheats Manager, the Homebrew Store Itemzflow, PS4 Explorer version 2, for the most part those are all working without any updates. Although Lightning Mods has released a new update for Itemzflow just to add support for some additional features within there. So if we look at the change log, we can see that there's been a new option to copy from instead of copying from the PFS image. We also have the fuse offsets that have been updated. Fuse being the NFS share feature, which allows you to run games directly from an NFS instead of from local storage. And you can also install package files from the NFS share as well. Offsets have been updated for 11.xx and 12.xx We also support. Have fixed an issue causing Itemzflow with custom themes loaded. Create more stability with custom themes. We also have the Ukrainian language support of the Don't Ask Again message to the startup cover. So whenever you load Itemzflow, it will always ask you if you want to download the covers although you can now tell it to don't ask me again. So it will not ask you that message every single time you load up the application. So you can load the application faster. Definitely a useful feature. We've also got replaced cover advanced setting with an option to kill the demon on app close, which is mainly for rest mode. We've also got a default font added. The package patch detection for the package installer's been updated. And an issue's been fixed with the Itemzflow versioning. So that's all been included there in the latest 1.07 for Itemzflow. And then also we've got the remote Lua loader, which has had a couple of small updates. We have a new game that was added a few weeks ago. Kuzo 14324. There are additional games that are not yet in this list that either have support already or will likely get support very soon. The list is available on the PS4 developer wiki, which is not displayed in a very readable form. So we'll go ahead and let print a more readable version here of this list so that you can see what other games you could possibly buy to be able to load the exploit. In the future, if you are struggling to find one at a reasonable price at the moment, some of these games may require tweaks in the Lua loader to get it to work, which may be why they're not yet added to the official list yet. And now, the remote Lua loader also shows your IP address when you load it, so that you don't have to go into the settings to look up your IP and then go back onto the application. When you want to send a payload, it just tells you the IP address and port number there when you load it, which is definitely a welcome change. So moving on to the PS5, there's been a few updates for the Blu-ray drive exploit. We're now on version 19 of Victorious X's ISO. So this is the auto jailbreak ISO, which now includes things like the Air PSX that's now been added. So as you can see, the UI has been updated a little bit with although I don't know. Do you like these icons better or do you prefer the ones from this? The Flow version that Ezeko sent me. So I don't know which one you guys prefer, but we'll go ahead and switch back to the original here. But yeah, as you can see here, we've got a bunch of different options. The remote jar loader lets you send obviously payloads remotely over the network to execute on the console. The USB jar loader lets you put the payloads on a USB drive, and they can be loaded from here. We also have your normal payloads that were there before, as the AirPods X payload that is also now available. So it's good to see that is now included. And then of course you've got the pipeline runner, which is used to chain load all of the different payloads, which is what you run when you try to jailbreak your console. You've got the all-in-one version which runs the jailbreak, the ELF loader, and then loads the web server payload and the ETA-HEN then payload. The normal jailbreak is the same minus the web server payload. And then I believe the third one here all-in-one. No ETA-HEN I believe should run everything, including the web server payload apart from ETA-HEN. And then the normal jailbreak. No ETA-HEN I believe is just the jailbreak probably itself, with the ELF loader without running any other payloads. So those are your kind of pipeline runner options. So normally you would run option 1 or 2. So I'm gonna go ahead and run the all-in-one ETA-HEN version. So particularly with this version, it should be a little bit faster and more stable than previous versions. So we're gonna go ahead and never going to be as fast as something like the Alua exploit. Of course, just because of the nature of that exploit allows it to run a lot faster. But as you can see, only took a few seconds there, and we're now running the Itemzflow. Also running the web server payload, as we can see, and it's now killing the disk player, which it needs to do before it can load ETA-hen. So automatically closes the disk player, and then it should start trying to run the ETA-hen payload, which we can now see is launching. So yeah, definitely seems a lot faster and smoother than previous versions. And it now runs, of course, the latest ETA-hen payload version to point to be. And not only that, but it also works completely offline. It was changed over to the ELF loader that can then load payloads from the local host. So it no longer requires a network connection to use the ELF loader, which allows it to operate completely offline, so that you can stay completely and still use the displayer and load all of your payloads. So some pretty good improvements that are being made to the Blu-ray version of the exploit from Victorious X. So another project I just wanted to highlight here is the Lapse project by D-Link Turtle, which is the Lapse kernel exploit plus master core, which equals Lapse core. So this is basically an attempt, obviously, to port the new kernel exploit to the master core exploit, which was kind of a userland exploit that came out a couple of years ago in a game called Ocade's Shadow King, which could be used to basically kind of break out of the PS to emulator on the PS4 and use it to actually sideload other PlayStation 2 games, which was a pretty cool feature at the time, especially since this could be done just kind of a userland exploit on its own, without having to chain it with like a kernel exploit. But that is what is being attempted here, is to actually chain it with the Lapse kernel so that you can actually jailbreak if you happen to still have a licensed copy of Okami Shadow King on your PS4 or PS5 on a jailbreakable firmware. Now, I certainly wouldn't hedge on using this to run the jailbreak in the future, because again, it is like just a hobby project for the most part. So I'm not sure if it will get fully supported, especially since the game in question is a digital-only game, and a lot more complicated to try and get your hands on it than the Lua games, because at least with the Lua you can get a physical copy and then the demos are free, whereas this game is a paid game that is digital only. So, but if you happen to be around, in 2023, when I was covering this pretty extensively, maybe you actually have a copy of Shadow King on your PS4 or PS5, a licensed copy, and it's now on a jailbreakable firmware. Maybe this project might end up being the answer to being able to run the new Lapse jailbreak using that master core exploit. But again, we'll have to wait and see if this project actually gets completed, because it is at the moment work in progress. Now, last but not least, we also have sold one of his PS5 test kits to Echo Stretch, which can then be used hopefully in the development of K-Stuff. So K-Stuff needs to get ported above firmware 7.61 to support all of the new that firmwares are now jailbreakable on the PS5, thanks to the new Lapse exploit. So that will hopefully be happening now. Obviously, Echo Stretch has been busy working on the PS4 version of GoldHEN, the open source version, but now we have people like Allison working on that. So I suspect that the focus will probably shift back over to K-Stuff for the PS5. So that is something that we'll hopefully see more development on fairly soon. So anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this one or found the information useful. Please leave a like and subscribe.